In the previous episode, we saw how Leping began forging one of his own weapons to demonstrate its qualities to the Dwarf King. Up next, after completing the initial forging, Leping carefully started sharpening the weapon. He worked slowly and methodically, clearly enjoying each moment of the process. Suddenly, the knife began to glow intensely. The Dwarf King and his son were astonished, wondering what kind of knife could shine so brightly. In his nearly 700 years of forging experience, the Dwarf King had never witnessed anything like it. It was as though the gods themselves had descended to bless this blade. Holy Sword Alpha and Wang Chai, watching from the sidelines, were just as surprised, speculating that the weapon might even attract deities from other worlds and allow them to leave traces of their consciousness within it. Leping approached the Dwarf King, asking if he could help identify the knife. Although the Dwarf King nodded, his entire body trembled at the sight of something so extraordinary. He took the knife and used 10,000 times magnification to inspect it. Yet even under such scrutiny, the blade remained flawless. There was not a single imperfection to be found. He doubted his own eyes, wondering if his glasses were broken. Finally, he decided to look for any special effects. As he appraised the blade, a description appeared. Table knife, made in Leping. An ordinary table knife forged by Leping himself. Special effect, one-hit kill. The Dwarf King was stunned by such an overwhelmingly powerful ability. He realized at once that this was no ordinary S-level or even Super-level weapon. It was a divine artifact. Thinking the grindstone might be the source of the knife's power, he touched it, only to have it crumble like an ordinary whetstone. He immediately understood that the weapon's power came not from the grindstone, but from Leping himself. Overcome with awe, the Dwarf King knelt before Leping, tears of joy filling his eyes. He asked how Leping could possibly forge such a creation, and whether he could share any insights into his forging process. Confused, Leping wondered if the Dwarf King was joking, unable to believe that his own ordinary methods could compare to those of master dwarven smiths. He explained that he had never thought too deeply about his approach, and that whatever knowledge he had was fairly superficial. Inwardly, Leping suspected that the Dwarf King was only being polite due to Elizabeth's influence, and that this display was overly dramatic. Nevertheless, Leping remarked that forging a weapon is a delicate, precise technique. At first, the Dwarf King was puzzled by this simple explanation, but soon realized there was a deeper meaning in Leping's words. Meanwhile, Elizabeth, watching from the side, commented that it is better to teach a man how to fish than to give him a fish. Recognizing that Leping was applying ordinary principles to unleash the power of rules. Shortly after, the Dwarf King gathered everyone to board a train bound for the kingdom of Aristotle. He explained that the train was used to transport ore directly to the royal city. Turning to Leping, he mentioned that Lord Demon, in her role as a transport officer, also had permission to enter the royal city. However, the train journey would take about 2 days. So the Dwarf King asked Leping why they didn't simply teleport. Leping reassured him that time wasn't an issue. What really mattered was that the kingdom of Aristotle should sense their goodwill. Hearing this, Miss Chi-Chi felt relieved, thinking how generous Mr. Leping was. She also hoped the kingdom of Aristotle would not reject such goodwill from the brave hero. Otherwise, all she could do was pray. Elizabeth then interrupted, asking Leping what they should eat for dinner if they had 2 days of travel ahead. Leping replied that he had brought all the necessary ingredients and would cook whatever she wanted. Meanwhile, the Dwarf King's son, Brienne, warned Leping that there had been many bandits on the roads lately and that several minecarts had been robbed. He urged them to be cautious. Despite his warning, it seemed that neither the Demon Queen nor the brave hero paid much attention. Then the Dwarf King asked Leping if he truly planned to give such a precious item to the dwarven nation. Leping smiled and assured him it was a gift for them. Inwardly, Leping felt a bit excited, thinking Elizabeth really did have considerable influence. Being her boyfriend meant everyone treated him with greater respect. The Dwarf King suddenly dropped to his knees in front of Leping, thanking him for his generosity. He proclaimed that, thanks to this knife, the dwarven kingdom's forging would surely advance to an even higher level. Calling to his son, the dwarf king insisted that Brienne also kneel and thank the brave hero. Both father and son got down on their knees, declaring that from that day onward, Leping would be regarded as the eternal forging god of the dwarven country. Leping blushed in embarrassment and told them it really wasn't necessary. Just then, Alpha called out from the train, saying it was about to depart. Elizabeth nodded at Leping and said, "Then let's go. The sooner we finish, the sooner we can return home." Leping said goodbye to everyone. Elizabeth then grabbed him and flew into the air, landing on top of the train. Resting her head on Leping's shoulder, she asked what he was thinking about. She wondered if, after Leping completed the final phase of training his forces according to his ideas, and the world returned to peace, they could live quietly in their own world. Leping looked at Elizabeth and told her that he was curious about what kind of combination could arise from merging technology and magic. Embarrassed, Elizabeth hid her face in her hands, whispering that they were still in public and couldn't do those kinds of things here. Leping laughed and clarified that he wasn't talking about what she had in mind. He mentioned that Anne had told him the kingdom of Aristotle was known for blending technology and magic, and he had long wanted to see it for himself. Now, he finally had the chance. Realizing her misunderstanding, Elizabeth blushed slightly. Feeling a bit hurt, she asked, "What about my feelings? Do they not matter?" Taking her hands gently, Leping assured her they did, but he would share his true thoughts on their anniversary day 1 month from now. Elizabeth insisted she wanted to hear it right then, but Leping promised that, once this adventure was over, he would officially give her his answer. Just as they were enjoying their tender moment, an explosion rocked the train. Shocked, Leping turned to Elizabeth and asked what was happening. Furious at having their precious time interrupted, Elizabeth glared at the source of the disturbance, a gang of sky pirates. Exactly as the Dwarf King had warned. Riding their flying bikes, the pirates shouted, "With us here you'll never transport a single stone to the kingdom of Aristotle." They fired again, trying to destroy the train. But Elizabeth, livid, unleashed her demonic power and crushed their bombs mid-air. Leping was astonished to realize they really had run into bandits. He cautioned Elizabeth not to be too merciless and to leave some of them alive because he had a few questions. He added that if they captured these bandits who frequently raided mines bound for the kingdom of Aristotle, it would further prove their goodwill. But if they're connected to the Dark Guild, Leping warned, that's another story. Elizabeth nodded in agreement, thinking to herself that Amelia would awaken in a day, at which point she would completely eradicate the Dark Guild. Just then, Alpha appeared behind them and told Leping not to worry about such a minor matter. Alpha would handle the bandits himself. Concerned, Leping asked if he would be okay. Alpha replied confidently, "It's time for the true holy sword, Alpha, to show its power. I'll be fine." The bandits were shocked to see their bombs destroyed in midair. One exclaimed, "The escort this time isn't a dwarf. Did they hire a bounty hunter?" Another bandit shouted back, "If it's a bounty hunter, can we take them out?" Their boss, the leader of the flying fish bandits, Pythias, warned them, "These people are powerful. They managed to use magic to destroy my special shells." He directed his men not to panic. "Focus all our firepower on destroying the locomotive, then pull back." With that command, the bandits swarmed to the front of the train, attempting to blow up the engine. Leping realized what they were up to and alerted Elizabeth. "They're heading for the front to destroy the locomotive," but Alpha insisted, "Leave them to me." The bandits hurled bombs toward the locomotive, yet Alpha effortlessly sliced them in half before they could detonate. Relishing the moment, Alpha thought to himself, "The golden legend, the noble holy sword, the rare divine weapon that decides the outcome of vital battles. I finally feel like myself again. There are no monsters like the ones at home. I am the one who stands below 3 people but above 10,000 others." Seeing their attacks fail so easily, One bandit cried out to Pythias, "These bounty hunters are no joke. What do we do now?" Still surprised by Alpha's prowess, Pythias wondered if Alpha was a weapon spirit. He couldn't believe such a powerful magical weapon existed. To his mind, the only explanation was that the dwarves had developed it for Aristotle, using their sky-color mine, though that should have been impossible. Determined to stop Alpha, Pythias ordered his men to execute Tactic Number 2. At his command, the bandits unleashed a strange smoke around Alpha, who immediately noticed something was off. Before he could react, the smoke hardened around his body like a shell, sending him crashing to the ground. The bandits broke into cheers. Leping, observing from a distance, saw something was wrong with Alpha. Elizabeth, however, reassured him. "Don't worry, he may act silly sometimes, but he's still a holy sword. He can handle this." Leping nodded. Elizabeth turned to him and said excitedly, "Now then, forget about him for a minute. Tell me, Elle, what did you want to ask me?" Leping just smiled and reminded her, "I'll tell you on our anniversary in a month." Although Elizabeth was eager to find out, she resigned herself to waiting. Meanwhile, Alpha shattered the hardened smoke with ease, leaving the bandits dumbfounded. Furious, Pythias could scarcely believe how effortlessly Alpha had broken free. He shouted for his men to disperse, but it was too late. Alpha quickly took them down, one by one. Turning to the bandit leader, Alpha declared, "Let's see who dares to look down on me now." Although the bandits survived, their flying bikes were completely destroyed. Stunned, Pythias realized the demon's level was no joke. Strapping a machine gun to his left arm, he yelled at Alpha, "In the face of science, magic doesn't mean everything," and opened fire. Alpha warned the bandits that if Leping hadn't insisted on keeping them alive, he would have killed them 10 times over by now. As he swung his sword to cut down their bullets, he was surprised to find the bullets sticking to his body. No matter what he tried, he couldn't shake them off. Confused, Alpha wondered what kind of ammunition could adhere to him like that. Suddenly, the bullets began to absorb his magic power. Seeing his chance, the bandit leader seized the moment and struck Alpha. He explained that everything in this world grows and restrains in balance. If you understand an opponent's essence and apply the right principles, you can defeat the strong with the weak. Ultimately, a weapon spirit was just an intelligent metal body with greater magic power and higher-grade materials. The alloy bullets he had crafted, using magic ore and magnetic ore, were specifically designed to counter someone like Alpha. With a steam punch, the bandit leader launched Alpha 10 feet underground. One of his lieutenants marveled at how tough Alpha's body was, wondering why the kingdom had suddenly dispatched such a powerful escort. For 2 months straight they had intercepted minecarts without any response. Now, out of nowhere, came a formidable challenger. What was going on in the royal city? Was that bastard minister plotting something? Regardless, as long as they cut off the kingdom's resources, they could keep him at bay. The lieutenant then prepared a devastating attack. Using his steam punch at full power, he prepared to unleash an air pressure fist cannon toward the train. But before he could fire, Elizabeth deployed some form of space magic and nullified his attack entirely. Confused, the bandit leader muttered, "How can anyone use space magic here?" Elizabeth cut him off, declaring that the fun was over. She demanded that he spill everything about their operation and explain their ties to the Dark Guild.